Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and this week my guest is Jason Fried, the co founder and CEO of 37 Signals, the makers of the popular BaseCamp project management software. Jason, of course, is a famous Bootstrap SaaS founder himself, is very successful, and he's been talking about building software companies without VC funding and doing it in a healthy way that works for founders and the employees and customers. He's written several best-selling books, Rework and Remote, and he was talking about different ways to work even before the 2020s, post-COVID, when we all changed the way we work. He's been doing this for over 20 years. So we talk about going long with a profitable software company that's great for founders and their customers and their employees, and something that founders can have fun in every day. He loves to build and he loves to share insights. So it's a great episode. A lot of insights from Jason Fried in today's episode. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
I appreciate it. Today's a Monday for you and Monday for most CEOs that I know and all the busy ones, who have end of year bigger companies. They don't have a minute on a Monday, but you made time for me on a Monday. I have a feeling your Monday is different than most CEOs of software companies, as you've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah, I don't actually schedule anything on Mondays or Fridays. I like go to the gym in the morning on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but other than that, there's nothing else scheduled for me on those days. And it's intentional because otherwise I know that these days would be totally filled. And these are the days where I feel like I want the most time to myself, actually, the beginning of the week and the end of the week to start things off and finish things off.
Well, so that ends up as time to yourself, which is a sacred and high leverage time, but it isn't just flexible, like whoever needs me, we can have a conversation. You don't play that knock on the door, let's have a chat game.
Well,
you've blocked off those times for you to do your work.
In a sense, but I am available. So the way we work at 37 Signals is we don't have shared calendars.
Yeah.
So there's actually no way to send me a meeting invite. What you do is if you want anyone's time, my time or anyone's time, you ask them. You say, hey, Jason, do you have like 20 minutes at like 1 o'clock or something? I just want to run something by you. And I can go, yeah, sure. Or no, like whatever it is. But this is true for everybody. So it's time should be kind of hard to take. Mm-hmm. And it's really a conversation. And I go, yeah, I'm free, which is why I like my day to be free. So those things that come up that are important to me and someone else, and like there's a good moment for it, are available versus having like I call it calendar Tetris, where like you have all these blocks and you're trying to find some spare time. Like I don't like finding the spare time. I like having the spare time. Then I can fill it as I go when I need to, if I can be useful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. And you've been doing this a while. So this isn't a new thing. And of course, you've been talking about this for, 15, 20 years. And you just hit the 20-year mark of BaseCamp, your primary product throughout there. You've done many things around there, but BaseCamp hit 20 years. That's quite amazing that it's still kicking. And I go to the basecamp.com website, and it's just a lesson in copywriting and positioning and storytelling and focus, and just love to see what all the iterations you guys go through.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're about to launch a new site this week, actually. So you can check it out maybe, I don't know, Wednesday or something. We love this. I mean, this is actually my favorite thing to do at the company, which is to redo the website, which is to think about the words, which is to talk it out, which is to kind of try to connect, which is to stand apart. I mean, if you look at pretty much everyone in our industry, everyone's website looks the same, sounds the same, acts the same. You can replace the logo. You wouldn't know if it was Monday or ClickUp. It's just like, there's not a lot of thinking there. And so we try to always sort of zig a bit while everyone's zagging or whatever you want to call it, and do something a little bit different and connect in a different way. And so it's fun. So we do it usually twice a year. We'll redo the site. Even if it's performing well, we just redo it because it feels like we should. And
like a complete redo, like a ground up kind of rethink. Is that right?
Essentially, primarily focusing on it's actually interesting. We have about 50, 60, 70 total pages on our site. And I'm like, this is wrong. This is too hard. There should be 3: homepage, pricing, and maybe features or something like that. But what we actually decided to do was combine the homepage and features like into one page. So
Mhm.
now we're going to have a 2-page website. There's some
Yeah.
auxiliary pages that exist because they're out there. People search for them. We have to like have a destination to land
Yeah,
on
yeah.
those, but we're
Yeah.
not promoting them.
Yeah.
So it's basically a 2-page site essentially. And that's going to allow us to iterate faster and to try more things more frequently and not be like, we've got like 60 pages to redesign. So that's kind of how we're doing it now moving forward.
Well, a little bit of that question there is like after 20 years, usually a profitable software business, the CEO has gone off and done other things. The website doesn't get updated very often. The code base stays the same. You let it ride, the cash cow game and everything. And most of the folks on the listening to this podcast are familiar with you and your great books and BaseCamp and your history. So we won't get into too many details, but really you're still kicking every week as an active, nitty gritty CEO.
Yeah. First of all, I just got to let you know there's a guy cutting down a tree next door. So you
Awesome.
might hear some chainsaw. I don't know if you can hear
Excellent.
it or not.
Well,
Okay.
how appropriate, Jason, because you're the master of cutting and editing and
And working at home.
you're
So
trimming.
there
You're
we go.
editing your backyard, I guess,
We
right?
got to put up with it. Well, it's not my backyard. It's the
Yeah.
next guy next
Yeah,
door.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, it's got to be interesting. It's got to be fun. It's got to be intellectually challenging and creatively challenging. And so that's why like I'm in the trenches and David, my business partner, is deeply in the trenches in the
Yeah.
code side. We make the products that we sell. We don't just watch them being made. We make them. We're in there too. And as long as that's still fun, as long as that's still interesting, challenging, as long as we still have ideas, we'll still be there. I think there's been moments when we sort of lost a little bit of touch
Yeah.
with the products and we just realized we're bored. And I don't want to be bored at work. I want to be engaged. And so we've kind of gotten back into making sure that we're very involved in the products and improving them all the time and making new ones. We're making 2 new products right now simultaneously, which we've never done 2 new things at once. So
Okay.
that's exciting. We'll launch them next year in 2025. And that's got us engaged as well. So yeah, it's still fun. It's still exciting. And we're able to sort of poke the industry and do things our own way.
Yeah.
And we're independent, so we can do it our own way and don't have to
Yes.
answer to anybody. And
Yeah.
it's a great privilege, frankly, to be able to do it this way.
Well, congratulations. It's
Thank you.
25 years and 37 signals, and you did that practical founder thing, having a service business and finding a product and doing that transition and,
Yes.
staying independent and,
Yes.
doing that and a portfolio of products that have come and gone, but BaseCamp is still going.
Yeah.
Is there BaseCamp project management? You've redesigned it through the years, right? It
Yes.
doesn't look the same as the old thing. Is
Yes.
it fundamentally the same as it at its core that we're doing stuff together and we need stuff in one place and we need to know what to do and what's next, but that definition can be endlessly evolved?
I think it is actually just about the same because
Yeah.
I think humans are the same.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't
Go figure.
we don't change. Like
Yeah.
you're working with 6 people. Okay, where's everything? Need to know where that is.
Yeah.
Who said what when? Need to know when that is. And I need to know where I should say these things.
Yeah.
We need to have like pretty much a shared vision of like the work that needs to be done and who's responsible for it and when's it due. All these fundamentals are really where it's at, which is what BaseCamp sort of initially, I think, what we nailed back in 2004, which is basically BaseCamp is a combination of a handful of simple tools that work together: messaging, tasks, milestones or dates, and files and assets. And there's other things we've built around, but these are the things that every team across every industry needs. And there's some other stuff, again, along the margins, but you've got to get the basics right. And, more people video chat these days. We don't have video built in because Zoom's quite good and there's other things that are quite good. Use whatever you want there. But the collaborative, fundamental information sharing, status, responsibility, that stuff just needs to be centralized and straightforward. This is the thing we find a lot is that people come to BaseCamp after taking this path through some other tools, which they've heard of. And they find that they're just not straightforward. They're promising. And then people slam into this wall of complexity and they go, no one's using this stuff. It doesn't fit. And the reason it doesn't fit most of the time is because most of these other tools that exist are built for big, huge enterprises. Those are the accounts that these companies chase.
Right.
If you've got a business of 12 people, if you're using enterprise software, it's like wearing a suit that's 3 sizes too big. It doesn't fit. And we have to think of software as something you need to find the right fit for, or it needs to fit you well. And we've always stayed focused and true to small and medium-sized businesses. And I think that's really helped us because everyone else kind of always goes up market. So anyway, yeah, I think essentially people are the same. The needs are essentially the same. There's some new stuff that crops up here and there, but the fundamentals have to be solid and dialed in.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this a long time, and I tell people I'm still sorting what's changed this last year and what hasn't changed in the 30 years I've been doing this. And it's all the human stuff that hasn't changed about how we interact and how we buy and how we communicate and how we hear stories and how we interact with groups and so forth. How we do it has changed completely, technically and tactically, but the human stuff really hasn't changed that much.
It hasn't.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting. So the best business advice I ever got, I was fortunate to be able to have dinner with Jeff Bezos at one point.
Yeah.
And he shared this advice with us, which is basically focus on the things in your business that don't change. Because of course you've got to innovate, but most businesses don't focus on the things that don't change. They forget about the things that don't change. And he goes, look, think about like in 10 years, people aren't going to want to receive their packages slower from Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. In 10 years, people aren't going to want the customer service to be worse. In 10 years, people aren't going to want the prices to be higher. Right. So like these like prices, customer service, logistics, shipping, we need to always focus on that's the stuff that matters. Yeah, we can do all sorts of other things. But if we lose sight of the fundamentals, the core, then we're going to lose our business. And so we've really taken that to heart with the fundamentals of basic communication and accountability and the ease of use and understanding where things are, and very, very like narrow or shallow learning curves, so people can just kind of jump in and figure this out without having to have training. Like this stuff matters. So yeah, people do things in new ways in some ways today, but if the old ways don't work, the new ways don't matter. Is kind of how we've always thought about it.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
So what has changed in BaseCamp world here? You're solving the same problem. I guess you've got new competitors that are, overfunded and doing that. And of course, you're famously bootstrapped. I think Jeff Bezos and maybe a few others donated to get on your cap table, but you don't really treat them like investors. But is anything changed in that whole project management marketplace? Are you now more positioned as the small one because everybody is chasing the enterprise guys, or anything else move around?
Yeah. I mean, the tool BaseCamp's never been better. BaseCamp 4 versions. It's a great product, and I'm not going to like pitch the product, but positioning wise, we've always been for small. We've always been for us. So we make BaseCamp for us. We're a relatively small. We have 60 people in the company. Yeah. So relatively small compared to everyone else in our industry, which has hundreds or thousands of people and hundreds of millions of dollars typically in funding. So what ends up happening is that these companies that raise all this money and have hundreds or thousands of employees, they must go up market and try to land big, huge enterprise accounts that pay them $20, $30, $50, $60,000 a month, right? That's the only way to support their structure and their weight. We have 60 people. We don't have any outside funding. We don't have a lot of expenses. We can keep our prices very low, and we can focus on companies like us. We don't have the pressure to have to pay back tens of millions or have some crazy valuation be justified. We don't have any of those things. We can just make something really good for the small guys like us that speaks to them, that understands the struggles of a small business, and that understands what it's like to just buy software that you really don't really care about, but you need, we don't forget, like, project management software is not like the most exciting thing in the world, but it's necessary. And so it's important for us to understand how people buy, what struggles they have. And so we're focused on that. And so competitors come and go, but they almost always pass us in terms of going up market, and we stay where we are.
Right.
And, I've always found it to be a much more stable place to be. We don't fight over the same customers. And we also, the other thing that we do, which is very interesting, is we cap our prices. So nobody can pay us more than, at the highest possible level, $299 a month, period, flat out. That's it. And most companies pay a whole lot less because we charge, $15 a person, and we don't charge for clients or guests or anything like that. So, but the point is that we're never going to be captured by a huge customer who pays an outsized amount and then forces us essentially to do what they want. We don't do that. We don't let that happen, and that's why we stay positioned well for the small, medium-sized business.
Well, and I see that in your positioning. I mean, literally, you advertise, as I encourage some practical founders to do, that they're the independent ones that are
Yeah.
sustainable companies that are, the founders still in the game. You have that
Yes.
on the homepage of BaseCamp, literally with your email Jason if you got a
Yes.
question for us. And we're the small one. We're independent. We're healthy. We're sustainable. We've been around. We're going to be around. It's a little ironic after all these years that somebody would buy Asana even though they're bleeding money every quarter as a public company and they advertise the fact.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
things that are not sustainable usually don't last, I've heard.
it's weird. I mean, if you really look at their financials, because they're a public company, they've lost well over $1 billion. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how to lose.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
right.
even know. I don't even understand. I literally, truly don't understand how you can lose that much money over and over and over, or even frankly spend that much money. If someone was to give us $50 million, I honestly wouldn't know what
There's
to
some
do with
practical
it. And
founders
I
right
think it
there. Yeah.
would make it worse. I
Yeah.
mean, you'd end up blowing it on marketing is what you would do. You'd end up
Yeah.
saturating the market with ads and whatever. And you probably would never make your money back on that anyway, but you just try to buy mind share and, the whole game that everyone
Yeah.
plays. That's fine. It's fine. They can play that game. We're not going to play that game, not
Yeah.
interested in it. There are many good products though, and there's lots of really good products out there. Asana is a great product. There's many good products, but what's important is that companies find products that fit
Yes.
them. Just like you want to find shoes and clothes that fit you. It's very important. I don't think people think about it enough that
Hmm.
software needs to fit. And this is something I've been meaning to, I'm glad we're talking about this because I've been meaning to write about this some more. I don't think people think about it. What they end up doing is they go, oh, like the big popular huge companies use this, therefore that's probably good for us. We only have 8 people, but like we should use what
Yeah.
Facebook's using because Facebook's hugely successful. So the thing is that you've got to follow and find fits that are like you. You don't want to try to do what Facebook's doing. It's just different. We're not even in the same planet essentially. But I find a lot of small companies have this sort of inferiority complex where they try to act big. They try to use what the big guys use, but what the big guys need is not what you need. And in fact, it'll slow you down because they're slow. You're fast. You're inherently fast and nimble. You're small. Don't follow the process and the products and the tooling that the big guys use because they're using it in a totally different way. They've got thousands of heads to manage, and that degree of those layers and that process is actually going to slow you down as a small business. So it's important to find the right fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about founder funding fit, where everybody could look at it. If you're not really paying attention, you think everybody's raising VC funding and everything's a unicorn and this is how you do it. And if you jump into an ecosystem, even in Chicago, people say, well, how much funding did you raise? And you do that kind of thing, even though it's not a fit for most founders. Like 90% of founders shouldn't consider playing that game in the modern era. You saw that really early. I mean, you were, let's say, religious about your independence and bootstrapping and so forth. And I made my practical founder conversion probably 5 years ago. Funding took off and then it got stupid and the cost of making software was going straight down. And I was just waving my hand saying,
yeah,
why are you raising funding? There's no leverage. But did you have an epiphany about raising money along the way, or did it always just strike you as that was silly and it's always been silly?
Well, I'm going to give you a couple answers because I'm not sure which is the right one. I've always found it to be silly. First of all, that is true, and I'll get into that in a second. But way, 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 way back in the day when we were a web design company, when I was first starting, there was this group in Chicago. We were from Chicago at the time, or based in Chicago, and right now we're fully remote, but we were based in Chicago at the time. And there was this company buying up all these web design firms and trying to sort of consolidate.
Yeah.
And part of it was people were raising money and giving money to these small firms and then buying them. And I remember like feeling this sense of like, should I do this? Could this be exciting?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember like sort of applying and then being rejected. And the rejection fueled me. And I think it was from that point on, I'm like, F that.
Yeah.
I don't need anyone's external validation. I don't need anyone's money. Let me show you what I can do on my own. Like it was this sort of, I'm like, so I'm 5'7", not a tall guy. I was really good at basketball growing up. I could jump, I could touch the rim. Like I was,
Mhm.
fast and springy. And when I would go on the court, people, he's kind of a short, so he's not going to be good at basketball. So I've always had this chip on my shoulder when people don't think I can do something. And so I think that in some ways that planted the seed that like, I don't need these guys. Who are these people with money? I don't need
Mhm.
them. Let me show you. Right. And so there's some of that.
Yeah.
There's also the sense that like independence has always been important to me.
Yeah.
That's why I became an entrepreneur, is to do things the way I wanted to do them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why be an entrepreneur?
Right.
What people don't realize is when you raise money, you don't really work for yourself anymore.
Yeah.
Like you really don't. You work for someone else's schedule, for someone else's fulfillment, for someone else's return. And yeah, it's true when you work, you're working for your customers. That's always going to be true. But you still have a sense of independence. You get to make your own decisions. When you raise money, you kind of don't in a lot of ways. Of course, there's always exceptions, but fundamentally you don't. That never appealed to me either.
Mm.
So I both had a chip on my shoulder and I didn't want to have to answer to anybody else. If I did, I might as well get a job. And I had a job for a
Right.
while. And I realized I don't like this. I don't want to. The person I'm working for is things they're doing I don't agree with. I'm not really in favor of this direction, but I kind of have to do it. And I remembered in my mind that that's what it would be like if I had to have an investor board meeting every quarter or
Right.
whatever and explain myself. I want our products to explain ourselves. I want our success to explain ourselves. I don't want to have to explain myself on a quarterly basis to somebody who's trying to get a return out of me. Not interested. So for all those reasons,
Yeah.
it just wasn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a powerful thing for founders. It's a little ironic that practical founders means reasonably crazy. But in order to create something in the world that, normal people don't do these things. So this is still
For
kind of
sure.
crazy. Create categories and build crazy companies that are used in, 150,000 users
Yep.
in under 63 countries and do it for. This is a crazy kind of adventure. But as energetic and change oriented and as entrepreneurs are, then they kind of do what everybody says you need to do, and they get themselves in the trap. Have you seen that through the years? I know you're operating, you're having lunch with Jeff Bezos. You know a lot of founders who've created big companies and raised funding, and you're probably playing in that league. But like, did you see the examples of the VC funded friends who got in the trap? I guess you'd say.
Yeah. First of all, I don't really run in those big circles. Jeff Bezos did buy a small piece of the company back in the mid 2000s, and he owns a tiny minority share and the whole thing. But yeah, we've gotten together 5 times in 15 years, right? So okay, so I'm not hanging out with the big wigs, but yeah, I do see it. I see it a lot, in fact. And I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs who write us or write me saying, hey, I thought I was doing it the right way and I raised a bunch of money and now I kind of see what happens. And thank you for showing me another way. So I've seen this. And what ends up happening is that it's a very quick flip. So first of all, it feels good to the ego to have someone want you.
Yeah.
And then it feels really good to have someone give you millions of dollars and trust you.
Speaking of human things that have never changed, right? Yeah.
Speaking of human things that have never changed, right? People want to feel important, obviously, and they want to feel big in a sense, and they want to feel powerful. And then you've got these wealthy people behind you puffing you up. Let's blow this up. I totally get it. But it's such a thin line because once you flip the switch and take the money, pretty quickly you realize, again, you don't work for yourself anymore. And unless you are wildly successful to the place where you're making other people gobs and gobs of money, then they will back off. Semi-early days where you're trying to get this growth that they expect out of you and you didn't have it before, now you don't have it right now. It's quite painful.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm thinking of a few different businesses and friends that I know who've been down this road and deeply regretted the move because while it sounded amazing and they were going to be part of this rare, unique club of people who've raised this money and have this valuation, they end up absolutely hating their own job, hating their company that they started. And again, you're using your term to feel trapped because you cannot back out.
Yeah.
You're going down that road now. You're in the cannon and it's blast off and that's that. Like there's no going back. And there is a deep sense of regret in some cases. Others, of course, have done well. But then after they've done well and they've exited, because that's kind of what you have to do, now they're left in their early 40s, let's say, like they don't know what to do next necessarily. They're wealthy, but they're also bored. They realize lightning doesn't strike twice. The second
Yeah.
time around, they're not getting where they were the first time.
Mm-hmm.
We're all a product of timing and luck in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And like, that's hard to have line up again. And then they're staring at the rest of their life. Yeah. People are like, well, but they're loaded. Yeah, they're loaded. But like, that's not all of it.
Yeah.
It's not all of it. When you have a creative mind and you're capable and you're talented and you've built something and now you don't have that thing anymore and you can't get back up the mountain.
It's brutal.
I know people don't have a lot of pity for, and it's, whatever, sympathy for them, but like, it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. So what we found is that like, look, we built something good. We got lucky. Timing was good. All the things that happened for us were very, very fortunate. Lightning struck. I want to ride this and improve this and do the best I can for as long as I can. This is the only job I ever want to have. I want to keep this company around as long as we possibly can, as long as I'm able to do it, because I don't think I could ever do this again, nor would I actually want to try, to be honest. So I want to just stay in it. I want to stay in it. David wants to stay in it. At some point, obviously, a company will either die, sell, get it, whatever. At some point, like something will happen. But as long as we're still able and enjoying it, we want to stick with it because we know how hard it would be to ever do again. And we don't think we frankly could do it again.
This week's podcast is brought to you by my friends at Fullscale. Last year, I interviewed three-time software founder Matt Watson on this podcast about his successful practical founder journeys. Matt leveraged offshore development talent in his last two SaaS companies to hire quickly and scale up efficiently. His top developers and designers were offshore in the Philippines, but they weren't one-off contractors and they weren't difficult to manage outsourced agencies. He found an endless supply of top tech talent who became savvy members of his team, working hard every day to get things done. So for his fourth tech venture, Matt created Fullscale, which is one of the fastest growing software development companies in any region. Fullscale vets, employs, and supports over 300 professional developers and designers and testers in the Philippines who can augment and extend your core dev team. I know practical SaaS founders who use Fullscale to grow faster and avoid the product development nightmares that can kill a growing startup. So visit fullscale.io and see why their approach works so well, and book a call to see if they can help you. Now back to our podcast. But it didn't start out that way. You were just doing stuff you loved, and the leverage popped out of it, and the thing happened. But then you could see it. It's so rare. And I meet founders that are the perfect founder for the perfect time, for the perfect explosion. And then they're talking about selling it. I'm thinking, you're a builder. Builders build. Right? What are you going to do next? And even just broaching the idea, even if they haven't raised funding, like they have a choice. They have their optionality. Broaching the idea of going long. Why not build something that has 10 times more impact? It doesn't have to be 10 times bigger or 10 times less fun. Why not do that? Most people have our eyes on the prize. If I get it to 10 million, it's worth X. And then speaking of human, right? The prize inside.
There's a financial reason why too, because we're structured as an LLC, which means that any profit that's left over at the end of the year is distributed to the members. Okay. So we are constantly every year taking money out of the business. So if you're not structured that way, though, in a sense, you keep putting money back into the business. And then the only way to get to achieve some financial independence or to become wealthy running a business is to sell the business at some point. So that's what happens if you're structured typically as an S Corp or C Corp or some other situation, because you can't really take distributions in the same way. Sometimes you can. There's some founder shares you can sell, whatever, but it's not like part of the natural rhythm of that structure. So for us, we have no choice but to take money out of the business. And so we're going to make the big dollars over 20 years, slowly, annually, versus having to wait for the big exit to get, let's say, paid or whatever. And then, so that's what ends up happening. So in order for people to see the fruits of their labor, they have to sell their business typically. Then they get the money, which is great, right? Obviously, if that's what you're in it for, obviously that's great. But then what, right? So I think we're more of like the slow roll. Take money out as you go. You never know what's going to happen. Most businesses fail. Most businesses go to zero. They just do. And so if you can take money out of your business every year, you keep taking more and more risk off the table, which is great, which is
Yeah.
what you should do.
You exit a
And then
little every year, you would say.
we exit a little bit every year.
Yeah.
And so David and I often talk about this idea of like negative visualization. Like if the company, if something happened next year and we went out of business, like it would suck. I would feel bad. I don't want that. I'd feel bad for our employees. They'd all be able to get new jobs somewhere, but it would suck, right?
Mhm.
But we'd be able to look back and go, we had a great 25-year run, 26-year run. We exited every year essentially.
Mhm.
We have more money than we know what to do with in a sense, right? And we're comfortable, very, very comfortable. We have enough, plenty. That to me is a good career, a good entrepreneurial story, rather than having to bet it all every year after year after year after year and parlay and double down in hopes of a big exit. And then you do that in your late 30s, early 40s, and now you don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
I don't like that outcome. So we've gone a different direction.
Well, and you've stayed with it. So somebody after some of my VC funded fast growth adventures in the old days, you pop out of the other side of it, selling the company and the rest, and you're kind of stunned and look around and have to rebuild, find the new horse to ride, and go make something else. But somebody said to me, "Well, Greg, the rest of us are trying to think about the life we want, and then we build the business to support the life we want." And my wires were crossed. I didn't understand it. Like, VCs would call it a lifestyle business, right? I mean, how dare the founders do this
Right.
and the owners do this for their own reason? It's really ironic there. You have a life. I don't know if you'd call it a lifestyle business. There's other lifestyles too, which is no life.
Yeah. Well, everyone has, I mean, that whole term is like, it's kind of a ridiculous term because everyone's in it for that to some degree.
Yeah.
I can only tell you, and this is, I'm just sharing, right. And this, I'm just sharing my own story, which is like, if somebody else wants to go a different route, of course, do that. I'm just telling you what we've done and how we've done it and the reason we've done it. But we've also figured this out as we've gone. This is not a grand plan. We didn't have a grand plan at the beginning. We just were making stuff. And then we had this idea to make BaseCamp. So we made that. And we had this idea to put it on the market and put some prices on it. And so we did that. And like, this is kind of prior to software as a service, early ones. So we tried that. And we tried some other products. Some have done really well. Some have not done so well. And we're just going along and figuring it out as we go. There is no grand plan other than to do our best work, be profitable. So keep our expenses below our revenue and take more money home than we spend, and figure it out year after year after year after year. And that's what we've done. And so it wasn't like we did this to get rich, or we did this to have recognition or to be relevant, or we just did this. And then all the other things come out of it. And that's great. Like that's just my message here is like, you don't have to have this all figured out. In fact, you can't have it all figured out. You don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
And I think you're better off sort of figuring it out as you go and being comfortable with that and not getting ahead of your skis and just sort of like, or over your skis and just whatever metaphor you want to use, ahead of yourself, over your skis, whatever. And just do your thing, heads down. Don't worry too much about the competition. They're going to do what they're going to do. You can't stop them. You can't really control them. All you can do is your own thing. My feeling is you only compete against your costs. That's my point of view on this. You don't compete against other companies. You compete against your costs. As long as you can make more than you spend, you're okay. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. Now, you could say, well, other people are taking your customers. Yeah, and you're taking some of theirs. And there's usually plenty to go around in most industries, more than plenty. And so just keep it tight and figure it out as you go. Take money off the table all the time, I think.
Yeah, I heard you and David on a couple months ago on your Rework podcast talking about that. And my version of that is, if you're sustainable and you're profitable, right, you could go another year, that's actually more powerful than, making 100% growth and becoming less sustainable, right? Burning cash and the rest. It's the practical founders who build and compound and learn and find the leverage in the business. They're outpacing the VC funded crazy folks. The DNA is getting pretty clear out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, people are like, what do you do with the competition? I go, well, one thing you can do is outlast them.
Yeah.
You can outlast. We have seen so many people come and go, and everyone's a BaseCamp killer. And again, there's many really, really good products out there. There
Yeah.
are fantastic. There's also a lot of customers out there, and there's a huge market, and they're going to have theirs, or we're going to have ours, and we need a lot fewer than they do because they've raised a bunch of money and need to have that value. Like, we've gone through this whole thing. So people come and go, and you can't do much about it, but you can outlast them by, again, making more than you spend. To your point about sustainability, building a business that can last, that can sustain itself, that's not beholden to financial trends, which also come and go. Money was 3-4 years ago, money was dirt cheap. Now money's expensive. If you were relying on dirt cheap money to keep your business going, when money's expensive, you don't have that fuel anymore. So, you've got to practice the profitability muscle and keep your costs in check so you can weather these storms and not really be as beholden to the storms themselves when things don't go your way out there. So as long as you can kind of be more resilient, that's kind of the other thing, is like to focus on resiliency, optionality, and not just growth. This growth thing is in my opinion just the wrong metric to focus on. It's like more about resilience, sustainability, that kind of stuff, because that can keep you afloat no matter what's going on out there. And if you have a long time horizon, to your point about going long, who cares if you grow by double digits for 3 years and then sink? Like, I'd rather grow by single digits forever. How about that? That's better. Compounding interest, better, like just simple returns over and over and over. I'll take that every day.
Well, you're from Chicago. I'm from the Chicago area here. Are you
Really?
still in Chicago? Do you live in Chicago?
We moved. We actually just sold our house. We're living out in Los Angeles now.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I grew up in Chicago. You spent, 45 years of my life there.
Yeah.
And we just decided, we've got 2 young kids, and we just kind of want to get out into the nice weather finally. My wife's from the East Coast in Baltimore. So like, it was time to get out to some nicer weather. But I do think the Chicago ethos, the fundamental Midwestern vibes are like deep in me, and they'll always be there,
Yeah. I kind of came back to it. I mean, I went all the way through Silicon Valley and did it back. But, the VC funding game was actually more practical 20, 30 years ago, before numbers started multiplying and it was all about mega. Let's say the old days. But coming back to my roots, that if you chug away and you keep improving and you don't stop and you don't look sideways and try to be cool, you can make a huge amount of progress. And it's really powerful for founders out there. You said a couple things there that, we're talking about this now, and I'm talking about it now. But when you started talking about it, words like the P word, profit, and the E word, enough, right, really weren't part of the language of software startups, and really never have been. But can you talk about the power of profit, that what it allows you to do? It gives you the space to invent and experiment and change and do your own things. Or, what can you say about profit for folks on the edge of spending every last dime to get to the next growth rate?
Yeah. For me, profit is about optionality, meaning as long as we, make more than we spend, we can stick around.
Yeah.
And sticking around means more opportunity. We can do this, we could do that, we could try this, we could try that. The more profitable we are, the more buffer we have to explore some things that might not pan out. And if you're a creative person and you like to build things and try things, profitability is the ultimate opportunity to do that. Because the hardest thing is, like, if you're deep in the red, like, you just aren't going to take as many risks. I mean, you might throw a Hail Mary because you kind of have to at some point, perhaps, but like, you're worried. You're always nervous. You're always anxious. You're always on the edge. You always maybe can't make payroll. Like, that is not an environment typically where you're going to try new, creative, daring things that may not pan out. Like, everything has to pan out at that point. And there's something to be said about that kind of pressure. And you do have that pressure early on when you start a business, typically. Like, you got to make something work. But to live that way for years and years and years, I think wears you down pretty bad. So profitability to us equals creativity. It creates opportunities. There's a buffer. And it's really the only way to buy time in business. I mean, as long as we make $1 more than we spend all in, and everyone's taken care of, and we've taken some money home, and everyone's been paid, that means we can try it again. We can try it again next year. And, you've got to have a lot of bats, or a lot of at-bats. And we've hit one huge, massive grand slam with BaseCamp, which continues. It's doing better than it's ever done. It's just great, right? But you want to make sure you hit a few others. And some are going to be base hits and some, I hit
Yeah.
sports metaphors, but like that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to hit another grand slam if we could. We haven't figured that out yet. High Rise is one of our CRM tools. We don't make it anymore, but that was a home run, I would say, actually,
Yeah.
for quite a while. But I'd like to see another grand slam, but I have to get another at bat. And I think the grand slam side of it is going to require some original thinking, some creativity, trying something new that hasn't been done before. And you're not going to do that from a point of squeeze where you feel terrified that if you get something wrong, you're out.
No.
Sometimes that pressure can create something, but that's like, it's almost mythology.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, the myth of we were running out of money and there we were at the top of Everest with no oxygen and we, it makes for great movies, I guess.
Yeah,
but
someone had an extra pack in their thing, whatever. Yeah, right.
So
we found something,
You're kind of a builder, maker, creator kind of founder, right? Not everybody's that way. That's a style you are. You love the art of building, the craft of this game. And we just talked about the constraint of funding and the space that profit gives you. But you create, let's say, voluntary constraints in your business. Let's make this website 2 pages. Let's take out the features. Let's say no. Let's not add all the people. It's almost like you create those voluntary constraints to give you the space to do other things. I don't know if that's 2 sides of it there, but you're known for saying no and being clear about your constraints.
Part of it is laziness, frankly. Like, work is hard. Do we not have to do some of it? How about that? Is there stuff we can find out that we don't have to do? Mm-hmm. So that's part of it, and an honest part of it. There's an aesthetic quality to efficiency that I like.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is like, can we make a web page that was 50 pages, or a website that was 50 pages before? Can we make it 3?
Yeah.
Like, do all those 47 other pages really matter? Maybe they matter a little bit. And someone's like, well, SEO, yeah, oh, that's true. Maybe to some degree, but really, does it really matter? I'd like to find out.
Yeah.
So there's an aesthetic quality to being efficient, not overly efficient. You want to have some body fat because you got to deal with things that come up and you're not ready for them.
Yeah.
But there's an aesthetic quality to it. There's a laziness to it. There's a beauty in doing the minimum, but doing the minimum really well. I find waste to be quite sloppy. Mm-hmm. Now, that's different than like creative exploration, where there's a lot of sloppiness when you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Like, we've been in R&D mode for these 2 new products we're working on for the past few months, and we're about to like kick into production, meaning like we know what we're going to do now and we're going to do them. But for the past few months, it's been like sloppy. Like, I don't know. Here's an idea. Like, let's play with this. And now we spent 3 weeks, 4 weeks exploring something. Is that wasteful? No, because we're actually in exploration mode, in a mindset. That's the process. Mm-hmm. What would be bad though is like 3 months from now when we're in production mode, if we're just wandering, not knowing what we're doing, and that would be bad. Like, so there's a time and a place for that sloppiness, but you can't have it all the time. That's the problem. So you've got to sort of like work out in a sense and make sure that you're toned enough to know when you can slop and know when you can't. And when you can't, you have to be like athletic and not be wasteful and be very efficient and powerful, essentially, to get things through. So it's a little bit of that. But also, I really can't stand doing work that doesn't need to be done. It actually drops my motivation to 0. When I have to do something that I know doesn't need to be done, 0 motivation. When I have 0 motivation, I suck. I'm like I do bad work. I procrastinate. I am difficult to work with. I have a short temper in a sense. I don't like doing things that don't motivate me. So that's another side of this whole thing as well, is to figure out what are those things that we shouldn't be doing, that we don't want to do, and then wondering, do we really need to do them? Because we probably don't.
Yeah. Is that one of the principles of going long and running a company for 20 years that still turns you on, is find out what motivates you and keep doing those things and stop doing the things that don't motivate you, if you're going to line them with something that creates a sustainable business?
Yes, I think it's necessary. And I'll give you a quick example. So we used to be called 37 Signals, and then we were called BaseCamp for a while because we kind of put our other products aside. And so we're going all in on BaseCamp, and we're even going to change the name of the company to BaseCamp.
I remember,
Right. We did that for a handful of years successfully. But then David and I realized that we're like, We had a new idea.
Yeah.
And we built this thing called Hey.com, which is an email service. And we scratched the itch. We had this idea. We wanted to do it. We had a blast doing it. And it's been a successful product for us. Not a home run, but successful.
Yeah.
And it's growing, but it's slow. But it's great. And we're like, that was fun. Let's do some more of this. Maintaining BaseCamp and improving BaseCamp is fun as well.
Yeah.
But we just realized we had to be honest with ourselves. We are builders. We want to make brand new things. Now, we make a brand new version of BaseCamp every handful of years, but it's still the same problem area. So can we work on other problem areas? And so email was the next one. And now we're working on 2 more things. We've actually done some other things with Writebook and Campfire.
Yeah.
So we've done some, and we have a new business model with Once, and we're playing around. So it's just exciting to do new things, try new things. And we've realized that you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to figure out what is your true nature here. Our nature is to make new things. And when we have that itch, we have to scratch it. And that's how we're able to still do this 20 years on. Now, there might come a point where we're out of ideas, or our ideas like just don't pan out, idea after idea after idea. Maybe we've lost it. That's possible. We don't have the mojo anymore. It's totally possible. Absolutely possible. And then we'll know. But right now we feel like we still got it. And so we're enjoying, using it.
Well, that's typical of the creator founders. But usually they build a company and then they let it get bigger. If it works, then it is fun. And then they sell it off and then they go work on their next thing. That's the normal story out there. But you guys didn't do that.
We don't have a next thing. I mean, the next thing is the next product. Yeah. So for the way I see it is, this company is, so when I was 14, I started making software, music collection organizing software using FileMaker Pro way back in the day.
Sure,
This to me is the same company. It's like the same thing I was doing when I was 14. It's just one long career of making products out of software products, essentially. And I've written some books and whatnot, but I just like to make stuff. So the next thing is within this company. Yeah. Why would I lose the company and all the leverage and brand equity and exposure and relevance and all that to close that, to start a new one and lose all those things? Maybe I have a little bit for a minute. We're like, hey, Jason's doing a new thing. Let's see what it is. But you don't have it anymore. So this envelope or this balloon or whatever you want, I don't know what the heck you want to call it. It just keeps sort of expanding to hold the next thing. Yeah. That's how I've seen this, as a constant envelope of that I can fill with new ideas, regardless of whether or not they're related. They don't need to be related. And so that's why, that's why we've done it, and we've done it this way. And again, as long as we still have the ideas and we still have a great team and our team's getting better and better, and then we're getting better and better at working together, and it's fun. Why stop that? Yeah.
How fun is that, to create new things that change the world with some crazy people that you love working with? That's pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're changing any worlds though. I don't think you need to aim that high. I mean, if you can, great. We've maybe changed some tiny worlds, Ruby on Rails is a big deal. Yeah. Our books have pushed people in really interesting directions. BaseCamp is a product that's really helped hundreds of thousands of businesses legitimately. So that's good. We're not changing the world, but we can help small worlds.
Small C, small W,
Small, very small W, cursive lowercase w, whatever it is. And I think this is an important message, because I do think that the entrepreneurial world is too focused on changing the world. And so that's a very, very high bar. And some people will clear the bar, of course. But a lot of people will die trying when they could have had, not literally die, but the business, when they literally could have had a wonderful mid-sized business serving 60,000 enthusiastic customers and having a whole multi-decade career doing that. That's an incredible place to land. Yeah. So I don't want people to look at that and go, that's a consolation prize. That is first prize. That is the blue ribbon if you can do that, And so you don't need to look at the stars here. We can keep our eyes or feet on the ground, do great work for a great set of customers, make more money than we spend, and do it for many, many years and many, many decades. That is a huge first place prize. That's a gold medal right there.
Awesome. Yeah. One of the things I think about with the builder founders, you always have a long list of problems you see and things you want to work on, and you get to the short list, and there's always this innovation. The founder's always running off to create something new, and they try to hand it off the old thing to the team to keep going with the thing. But most of those companies I know, those founders, love to be in the room with their co-founders and the co-creators and the whiteboards and, everybody in one room coding and building and what do you think and rubbing shoulders and late nights and that kind of.
Yeah.
But you guys are doing that, but you're remote, right? And of course, you wrote the book on remote and you helped pave the road for what we're dealing with right now. How do you do that kind of innovation, collaboration remotely? It's not all asynchronous, is it? Like it's not one big Slack conversation.
Never Slack. We use BaseCamp.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, excuse me. Pardon me.
No, never. It's a swear word in our world. No, we use BaseCamp first of all. So most of our communication is asynchronous, but we occasionally have calls like this, and they're usually one-on-one or 2 or 3 people max. So we don't have these like 6-person calls.
Yeah,
we have conversations, and conversations are between 2 or 3 people, and they're short. Let's riff together. Let's look at something together. What do you think of this? Hey, I want to show you something. What do you think? And that's why we keep our schedules open so we can have conversations when time. You don't have to you don't schedule a conversation with someone. You just have the conversation. You say, hey, are you free to talk? Yeah, sure, let's talk.
The old check.
And if they don't get back to you, then they're not free. Like you don't poke them some other way. Like they'll get back to you when they have a chance. So there's a lot of this. It's primarily asynchronous though, and we get excited by looking at the actual work. So one of the problems with being, in my opinion, being together too much is you get excited by being together.
Yes.
And you get excited about the ideas that spring from being together.
The energy.
And then you don't actually make any progress. You are like on a treadmill and you're running and you're busy, but you're not getting anywhere. And this is what can happen, I think, when people are too enamored with the physical presence. So for us, all we have to show is the work, is the progress of the product and the occasional conversations to show each other something and then riff on something. And then we go heads down and do the work. And so we just simply, we don't have the convenience of not making progress. And not, I think again, teams that get together, they can feel busy. They can feel like they're doing something, but they end up spending a lot of hours not doing anything. We don't have those chances. And that's a good thing not to have those chances. So that's how we essentially do it. We look at work together all the time. We don't brainstorm. We brainstorm a little bit, and then we do the work and then look at the work and come up with some more ideas, but we don't imagine all the things that could possibly happen all the time. We're very focused on the thing we've decided to do and how to make that thing better. And if it doesn't work, we will throw it away, but typically we'll figure out a way to get there. But it's not this freewheeling riffing session constantly. It's like idea, let's build it, let's look at it, let's hone it, let's tweak it, let's play around with it some more. Cool, next feature. And so it's very, very focused in that way. And that I think is what allows us to actually make a lot of progress by having that kind of traction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and thanks for writing Rework and Remote. And I can remember where I stood in the bookstore. I read the entire book of It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work. Right? I was like, I was in the crazy zone, and you were speaking to me. And thanks for contributing what you have. That's a generous act for you as you're so thoughtful about your everything going on, product design and business and so forth, to share that as you have through the years. What final wisdom do you have for practical founders out there in the modern vertical B2B SaaS, horizontal niche, AI's coming, the world we're still doing the same thing. It's 25 years later, but there's some changes in the world. What advice do you have for the practical founders out there getting their businesses
Very
going?
Practical advice, which is, again, like, stay grounded. Don't build out of envy. So don't look around at your competitors and go, I wish we were as big as them. First of all, you don't know. There's a very good chance your competitors are suffering miserably.
Yes.
You don't know.
Yes.
You don't know. Unless they're public and you can look and go, yeah, I don't want to be doing that. I mean, some of them could be doing well too, but for the most part, small sphere. Don't look everywhere. Stay pretty focused on your own thing. Build your own stuff. Compete against your own costs and your own self and your own sense of quality. Find customers that you understand. Build something that you would use yourself and that you desperately need yourself versus trying to imagine what other people need. I find that to be the best way to work, is to build something for yourself. You can judge quality better. It's also very satisfying to have the thing that you need to, and to constantly work on that thing. Like BaseCamp is something we use every day more than anybody in the world. And so we want it to be exceptionally good. And that benefits all of our customers because we want it to be good too, right? So that's important. And I would also say, like, when you're small, you have a huge advantage. And a lot of entrepreneurs see themselves as small and inferior. And they're like, I'm inferior. We need more. If we had only had more people and more time and more money and more this, more that, right? Like, you have what everyone else wants. Most big companies wish they were smaller, actually. They remember when they reminisce, it's like, man, remember when we were smaller and we could just move really fast and do all these things and not have all these layers? You have what they have. You have what they actually want. Most big companies don't want to be bigger. They actually want to be a bit smaller. The other thing I will say, I'll end with this, which is that small teams can do big things and small things. Big teams can only do big things. Big teams can't do small things. And small things are often all that's necessary. So you have a real advantage when you're a small company, when you're a practical company, when you're just grounded and thoughtful and not out of your head and trying to be someone you're not. Stay small, stay tight, focus on your costs, focus on your own thing, do your own stuff. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Pay attention and stay curious and find something that you enjoy doing. And it kind of will hopefully perpetuate you and drive you through it. All that said, this is hard. All of it's hard. Whatever advice you get, it may not work. It probably won't. You're going to have to figure it out yourself. But be true to yourself and figure out what drives you and go for it. Yeah.
Think small, play hard. Thanks, Jason, for being on the Practical Founders podcast.
Oh, it was great to be on here, Greg. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Yep.
Thanks for watching this week's founder interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to hit like and then subscribe to my Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly videos for serious software founders who are building valuable companies without big funding. Check out my blog and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com. And follow me on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going. See you next week.